This Talking Flutes podcast is kindly sponsored by Trevor James Flutes, making life sound beautiful. You can show them some flute love by following them on Instagram at TJ Flutes, Trevor James Flutes on Facebook, and at trevorjamesflutes.com.
Hello, welcome to Talking Flutes and a very happy 2022 to all our listeners. I'm here with JP, Jean-Paul, and he's in his house in Kent, and I'm here in Hove, so we're on Zoom because we couldn't quite find a time to get together in person. So Happy New Year to you, Jean-Paul.
Happy New Year, Claire. As you can see, my voice has been, I've been speaking too much over Christmas, and it's now New Year. Hello, Claire.
Oh dear.
Hello, Claire.
Oh dear.
Hello, Claire. Nothing changes. I'm back 2022 and I'm still as crackers as always.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, did you have a good Christmas?
Yes, my lady, I did. I had the kids home. The dog behaved herself. I tried to do a jigsaw and the dog ate it. And I had a few sherbets and, I thoroughly enjoyed myself. Thank you for asking. You?
Well, relatively quiet, apart from the dogs. Quite a lot of nourishment in terms of food and drink. Started the jigsaw, yes. Lots of nice walks and have just started going back to the gym, which is well needed after all the nourishment.
Nourishment. You're so posh, aren't you? Nourishment. Hello, Claire. I'll speak normally now. Sorry.
Well, thank goodness for that.
Yeah, I didn't know where this was going, did you?
No, I thought I might have to edit that out.
Yes.
So we've got some questions again from our listeners.
Oh, to start the new year with. Oh, how wonderful.
Yeah. So our question is banishing the past to the past and creating a new start for practice and performance.
Cool, that's a long sentence, isn't it? Banishing the past to the past.
Yeah, banishing the past to the past. Well, I think what's nice about the new year is that you can just sort of push the old year away and think ahead. And it's, as we've done before at the new year, we talk about it's a time for sort of setting new goals, resolutions, and realistic goals, which is a very subjective question, of course. We could say that a realistic goal is when the chances of your success and of achieving your goals, they're high. And so setting goals are good, but as long as they're not too high or too low, because that can be so disappointing and depressing. So it's being realistic with us, because goals can help us achieve more. But having thought about your goals and thinking, yes, I can take myself from A to B, you've actually got to then make sure that you do it and turn those goals into some sort of actions. So think about the difference between dreaming about something and actually doing something. Dreams can make you feel really good, but goals need you to plan and to focus and to act. So they need to come from you, or they can come from a teacher, or they can come from listening to podcasts or something inspirational. But if you do have a teacher, maybe let that teacher guide you and help give you practical advice. Maybe don't make your goals too general, like I must practice more, I must eat less. Keep your goals quite specific. For example, I'm going to try and practice so many days a week, 3 days a week, 4 days a week. I'm going to timetable my practice so that I achieve it, or I'm going to learn something new each week, like a scale or a movement of a piece. So it's being specific. You can have a long-term goal, which could be, I'm going to learn all my scales, but your short-term goal is I'm going to do one a week. And it's like, we often say, long-term goals, I'm going to get fitter. And the short-term goal is I'll go to the gym once a week, or I'm going to walk every day, or I'm going to jog twice a week. And then within your short-term goals, try and pull out those weaker areas. So maybe it's getting your sound a little bit better. getting your fasters a bit, fuzzy articulation, get your articulation a little bit better, getting your fingers a little faster, and plan it, just plan it, so that it doesn't have to be anything extreme here or complex, something very, very simple. And if you write it down, it makes it more realistic, more real. So we always say that if you aim too low, it can demotivate, but a high aim can give you lots of energy and thrust you into action. But be careful that you don't aim too high, which will stop you. Maybe you'll give up. Confidence, motivation, skill, discipline, control, planning, time, and one step at a time.
How wonderful. You said it all, didn't you? For me, I like that sentence, banishing the past to the past, because how easy is that? It's actually quite hard, isn't it? Banishing the past to the past. And you're right, is that you can choose any day to start doing everything that you've spoken about. But generally the first seems to be just a natural time, because it's a new year, a new number, 2022. So I think we have to sign up to banishing the past to the past. Whatever great things happened in the past or what not great things happened in the previous year, we have the opportunity to begin afresh. And what Claire cleverly did is that she, without actually saying the word, she sort of cut everything down into chunks. In other words, you have your long-term goal and you have your short-term goal. And within that short-term goal is all these little chunks, which is what I do every year. I work on marginal gains, which is, if my aim was to get from A to B, how big is that gain and how small can I just work on each little thing? Because as Claire said, if you've got weakness with your sound and you've got weakness, but you haven't got weakness with your technique, don't spend all your time on your sound because your technique will suffer. So it's doing little small incremental improvements. And they are achievable, aren't they? They are achievable. So within everything Claire said, I would just add to that, chunk it, add small little marginal gains, record yourself, and also sign up to the fact that you can have good days and bad days, and embrace the good and also embrace the bad, because the bad will come. And I say bad, but the days when you're not feeling great, where I wake up most days, my chops, they feel like rubber tires. So, and I scare the neighbours, I scare the birds outside, I scare the dog when I start practicing. So I think my aim this year is not to scare anybody.
Good luck with that. I think you can also learn from your off days, probably more than your on days. If you have a little think about it, or, if you're not sounding very good, or if your fingers aren't working quite so well, have a little think about why. Are you too cold, too hot? Did you sleep well? Have you eaten well? If we think of ourselves, as we've talked before about, think of ourselves like athletes. Athletes need to keep their nourishment right in order to perform at the highest level. So if I use my golf analogy, because it's the new year and I think I really should bring in golf again. So professional golfers, they make a point of, they play a round of golf which takes at least 5 hours. And they have to make sure they're drinking regularly and eating regularly so that they keep the energy throughout the 5 hours. So we have to do the same thing. If you pick up your flute after you've just got out of bed, you're not going to have maybe the right sort of energy with which to do a really good out of practice where you're focused and you're thinking about what you're doing. So you need to maybe eat something or drink something or have a walk first, or make sure the environment in which you're playing is good, that it's warm enough, that it's quiet, that you're not disturbed, that you're not distracted. So there was so many factors involved in being able to do a decent amount of practice. So yes, really thinking about when you're having a bad day is how you can make it a little bit better for the day after.
And that brings, you sent me this little list over, that brings us quite nicely into number 2, which I'm a bit of a fanatic at, but journaling, the importance of writing things down. Are you a list person, Claire?
I am very much a list person. Journaling is sort of a new word, isn't it? It means taking some time to think about stuff, doesn't it?
Yeah, yes, I'm writing it into a diary of some description.
What are you doing?
I'm just holding a golf tee up I just found in my trousers.
Yeah. very good. Shows that you've been playing golf. Excellent. Well done.
I think playing golf is not the right word, Claire. Sorry, yeah, it's journaling. It's writing down your thoughts and feelings about something rather than creating a list.
It can be sort of about what you've done maybe during that day and about something that maybe that's inspired you or something that's bothering you.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I'm a list freak. I write lists on everything. If I have to begin the day, I will check the list I made for the night before and add anything that needs to be added. And I will circle them. I won't cross them off. I'll circle them once they're done. For me, journaling is very important because we all undergo sort of emotional and physical highs and lows in a month. And that does affect how we are as musicians and how we are as flute players, because we don't have a mouthpiece, we don't have a string, we don't have a reed. Really, we are the sum of our voice. And our emotional well-being, I think there is a direct correlation with how we perform in our practice and our lessons and as a musician. So what I like to do is I like to write down each day, the good things I've done, and how it's made me feel. But I also have a little code which I can refer back to, which is because if anyone finds my journal, I don't want them to know my innermost thoughts. I was feeling really low, or I was manic, which I think I have more manic days than I have low days. But I don't want everyone to necessarily know, but I want to be able to go and look and say, the reason why I wasn't playing so well last week was because of this. So I have 3 symbols that I add to my journal. So if I'm feeling really good that day, and I'm talking about not good with my play, I mean, you could add this as like a playing one, but for me, it's emotionally, how am I feeling? So if I'm feeling good and positive, I'll put a cross. I'll just put a little cross and an add sign. If I'm feeling comme ci, comme ça, I'm feeling sort of okay, sort of chilled, but okay, I'll put an equals. So I'm with sort of equilibriums there. And if I'm not feeling really good, I'll have a minus sign, subtraction. And you could do this with your music. So it'd be interesting because there is often a correlation between the plus, the equals and the minus sign if you're feeling like that and how your practice and your performance is going. The benefit happens is when you go to your lessons or you go and do a performance, because you can look back and say, the reason why I was playing well or I had freedom then was I understand it because I wasn't feeling that good. I wasn't on my game. But what's really interesting is once you start writing that plus, equals, minus, how gradually you begin to change. And you can quite easily switch that minus to an equilibrium. So journaling is not only for me writing down how I'm feeling about doing something. How did my scales go this morning? Did I do everything I wanted to do? Which piece am I playing? Am I going to try and play through the whole piece, or am I chunking it into subsections? But I do little codes on how it was making me feel and how I believed it went. And journaling it's good to look back, and it is only a looking back. And once what's gone is gone. But as you've said in many, many previous podcasts, Claire, you can always learn by something that's gone. And when you learn from something that's gone, the next day is a brand new day and you've learned something. So if you haven't played particularly well in an exam or in an audition or in a lesson, why haven't you? Look back through your journal. Did I practice? Did I do everything I should have done? Was I feeling not great and just sort of passed on the practice? Because there will be a correlation between the outcome and what you have or haven't done.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So what you're saying, it can be a very supportive practice to engage in, but maybe especially during difficult times.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Because you can use it as a tool to help improve how you're feeling and how you're thinking about things, where you can sort of start to notice maybe any problems or fears you've got or concerns you've got, and you can sort of almost track them and put them down on paper, almost like releases some of the anxiety about it as well, I think. It
does. And sometimes, Claire, if I have 2 or 3 days where I have a negative, I know that one day I'm going to get a plus. So I just think, it's another day where I'm not feeling that great, so it's negative, but tomorrow might be a plus. So there is always that looking ahead, not worrying about. I mean, you could say the reverse is that
3 or 4 days of plus, ooh, I've got minus coming. But it just does help just to sort of twist you out of a mindset you may be in. And for me, it works. It helps me understand what place I'm in. So when I can track back, is why did I do something well, or why didn't I do something well? I have this information that I can learn from.
Great advice. I think so. Just to sort of be a bit concise here then. So you would say that journaling means you're putting aside a little bit of undistracted time to sit down and think about stuff.
Stuff, yeah. And how you regard stuff is very personal. For me, I mean, a lot of people like to write their feelings down. For me, I just like to have 3 little signs, which I can easily see. But yeah, it's stuff. It is writing down stuff.
For me, this is really very, very new because I write lists, but I don't really do journaling. And I think I'm going to start that this year, I think. I think it's a really good process to go through.
It might help with the golf.
Thank you for that.
It's all right, my lady.
Next sort of question. I suppose we've just covered it, the importance of prioritising self-care in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it is... I only came to self-care probably, in the last couple of years. As you know, I'm a long-time meditator and you meditate as well. But for me, self-care and finding time for me has never really been forefront of my mind. But when you look at musicians and you look at the standard of flute players coming, young flute players, and those that are coming through the conservatoire system, the pressures on young people are so high that sometimes the enjoyment gets taken out of it. And if you're an adult flute player, you're trying your hardest, but you're always being very self-critical. And when you're being self-critical, it doesn't add to your feelings of well-being. So the importance of self-care, taking time for yourself, taking time to listen to a podcast, to read a book, to try and relax how you are, and to look at the flute as a tool of enjoyment. So that's, for me, that's the importance of self-care.
Yeah, and self-care, same as in any year, but now that mental health issues are so much more in the open and being talked about, it feels easier to look after ourselves. I mean, certainly when I was at college, no one ever talked about their mental health.
No,
it was seen as a weakness. You never talked about it. You just got on with it. And I don't know how damaging that has been over the years for so many of us, but I feel it's not healthy. But now it feels much healthier for people to say how they're feeling, and in which case they can then get help. So it's so important to prioritize your own self-care. Be very much aware of how you're feeling and how you're working in order to progress.
And as your son, Dr. Joe, said in one of his podcasts this year, it's okay to talk to people, a friend, a relative. It's okay. In fact, not only it's okay, it's vital that if you're not feeling great,
Essential.
Yeah, and if you're feeling really, really low, seek urgent attention, because you're not going mad, and just that release of tension by talking to someone will help.
Yeah, and one of our questions was self-care strategies to consider implementing. Well, I think we've covered a lot of it, but again, to be slightly concise. So it's, yes, journaling, realistic expectations, taking time off, but also putting in the practice, planning your long and short-term goals, asking for help, maybe consultation lessons when it gets, if you want to be a bit more flutey specific.
And you know, the good thing about consultation lessons and the use of Zoom is that you can actually study with anybody in the world.
Absolutely.
And that is part of your self-care, because your self-care is not necessarily confined to one teacher. Self-care is looking after yourself, looking after interpretation, and the wonderful podcast that Clare did last year with Patricia Nagel, which is about the line, the importance of the line, the importance of phrasing. When you go to different teachers, you're not playing Bach the same way with one teacher as you will another teacher. There'll be certain emphasis and certain styles and certain lines that they'll be asking you to take. And part of your self-care, as Clare has said in previous podcasts, is about learning and is about having other influences.
And being open to many different perspectives from what you're doing.
Yes. And that's very hard in the flute world, isn't it, to actually being open, because there's a few different schools, there's different styles of playing, and You're exactly right. Being open and not critical of others and not critical of yourself.
Which also very nicely segues into our next sort of topic, which is the importance of being your own unique self and not trying to imitate others.
Good grief.
We're all looking for our own uniqueness or our unique selling point, like maybe I should say, or we should be, I think. The flute world is highly competitive. And I think sounding different is important, sounding different in a good way. Being able to stand out from other players, but in a good way.
Yeah, that's not being loud, is it?
No, you just remember, just read about, there was a student at the Royal Northern many, many moons ago. She appeared one day with green hair, stunning flute player, but she just decided to go green. And so she wasn't allowed in the orchestra because, she would just stand out so much. So she was told she couldn't be in the orchestra, so she changed it to spiky blonde, which still made her stand out as just having a bad hair day, but at least it wasn't stand out as the green hair. But it's interesting that she was just trying to assert herself, I suppose, in a way, but maybe not necessarily in the right sort of way. I think it's very important to create your own style of playing rather than outrageous images. Trying to create your own style. There's a tendency for quite a lot of players, this is a very general viewpoint here, there's a tendency to learn with lots of different teachers, sort of 6 months here, 6 months there, to swap around your teachers. And then on a CV, it says, I've learned with this person, this person, this person, this person. Well, you haven't. You've just had 6 months with maybe, half a dozen lessons. I don't think it's healthy to go just a few months with one teacher and then move on to another teacher. I think in order to develop your own style, you need to stick with one teacher. So thinking about some general things then, in order to create your own unique selling point, look at the first things you can look at. So I said, yes, try not to keep swapping teachers because it's very difficult to develop your own style if you keep swapping. Don't copy what you hear on recordings because that again is not your style, it's someone else's style. Use them for inspiration, but you've got to learn to develop your own way of interpreting things. I always used to say to students, when you're learning a piece for the first time, don't go and listen to it because it's so easy. If you've got a good ear, you'll just copy it. Develop your own style and interpretation. Learn a piece and make decisions on what you want to do with it in order to help this uniqueness. Look at your program planning. So if you've got to give out concert programs, think about how you can make it interesting so you can start to get a name for yourself as having really interesting programs that people get excited about. So it might not just be flute and piano. You might introduce other instruments. You might introduce a singer. You might I think about introducing your pieces, connecting with your audience, communicating with them, and then you get a reputation for the artist who always makes a point of listening and talking. And to create a relationship with the people who've paid money to come and hear you play. How you dress, that image. So not like my ex-student who had green hair, but maybe there's an image the way you dress, which creates a buzz when you give a concert or when you go to an audition. Not too outrageous, but think about maybe some sort of image, and then how you react to your audience and your peers, how you relate to them, so that it becomes part of your uniqueness.
I would 100% agree with that. And questions that people have asked me before is, how do you know your unique self? Well, the thing is, you do know your unique self. If you're shy, if you're an introvert, you know you're shy and an introvert. But that shouldn't be viewed as a negative. That can also be viewed as a positive. And just like if you're an extrovert, sometimes as the lady, as you're one of your students with green hair, she knew who she was because she changed her hair to green, but didn't know that would not help her career. So your unique self is knowing when to temper your personality and knowing when, if you're an introvert and you're quite a shy person, when to just add a layer of if you have to act as a musician, you act all the time anyway because you're telling a story. But if you have to add something to your well-being, to your whole, to be able to communicate to another audience, then as long as you know your starting point, then you're staying true to yourself. And I totally agree when it comes to don't try and copy other people's sound. So many people over the years have tried to be mini Sir Jameses, and you hear that beautiful, beautiful vibrato. And there is only one person in the world that can ever sound like Sir James, and that is Sir James. And I think when you hear flute players, there's so many different flute players, each one has their own self. And each one of these flute players you listen to is attractive as a sound to different people. There is no right, there is no wrong. We only have personal preference, and there isn't a golden medal for personal preference. So I totally agree. Finding your unique self in how you look, how you think, how you play, and how you sort of conduct yourself as a musician is the only way forward, really.
I remember from so many lessons where I've heard a student play a piece for the first time, and I know exactly which recording they've listened to. And there's nothing original about what it is that they're doing, which is why I just wanted to reiterate, please don't listen to someone's recording to learn how to play something. Get the score, learn it on your own, and make decisions, because there's not really a right and a wrong way. I mean, yes, there are different stylistic questions you have to sort of ask yourself, but your teacher's there to guide you. It's very difficult to guide someone who's just got so sort of entrenched in a particular person's way of performing something. So be creative, and you can only be creative when you're on your own, practicing with your own thoughts and ideas.
Yeah, and that is your unique self, because that is who you are, isn't it? Your own thoughts, your own ideas, and I'm not you, you're not me, I'm not anybody else, and I think deep down we all know who we are, and it's bringing that out as a musician, isn't it? As a flute player.
Yeah. So not gimmicks, something that's well thought out, and not copying. Although imitation is the best form of flattery, but we need your own creativity to come through. Try something different.
And that's what makes the magic, isn't it?
Yep, that's what makes the magic. So I think that's our podcast for the new year. New year, new you. I think we've helped with a lot of areas that people can look at, in terms of setting new goals, journaling, being positive, self-care. I hope that's helpful to people. And if you've got any comments, just let us know, please.
Yeah, flutepodcasts@gmail.com. And before I forget, and I'm going to try and make a habit of this, is whatever podcast station or channel you're listening to on, please can you give us a like and a rating, please, because flute players are coming to Talking Flutes all the time as they discover podcasts. Even though podcasts have been the big thing for the last couple of years, believe it or not, flute players, only when I meet flute players, say, oh, Talking Flutes, I haven't heard of that. So they then go and find it. So if you rate and like us, then the newbies amongst you will be able to find us much, much easier. So yes, rate and like. And send us an email to, as I said, flutepodcast@gmail.com. You can contact Claire directly on Instagram @ClaireFlute and at Twitter @ClaireFlute. Brilliant. Thank you, Claire. Happy New Year to you again.
Happy New Year to you, and look forward to chatting to you again soon with a lot more questions.
I look forward to it, my lady. Look forward to it very much.
Bye for now.
Talking Flutes and Talking Flutes Extra are podcast productions by the Trevor James Flute Company. For more information, visit trevorjamesflutes.com.